A man knelt on the pavement. His prosthetic legs creaked as he reached up, one hand clutching the guard's ankle. He didn't shout, didn't beg. He just held on, trembling. People walked past. One stopped, began recording. The Royal Guard stood perfectly still, eyes low, jaw locked, no command, no gesture, no refusal. Only his gloved hand moved slightly to cover the name of a regiment etched in silver on the scabbard by his side. Why hide that? Some stepped back. Others stepped closer. A ripple of discomfort passed through the street, not from the man on the ground, but from the one who did nothing. A woman in a gray coat whispered, "Isn't he supposed to help?" Someone beside her nodded. Another shook their head. The camera kept rolling. The guard's breath was steady, too steady, like he had trained for this kind of silence. His eyes didn't meet the old man's, didn't even flinch when the fingers tightened around his ankle. And still, his right hand remained over the scabbard, as if guarding not the sword, but something beneath the metal. Something written, something meant to be seen, but now deliberately hidden. The sun caught the edge of a medal on the veteran's chest, reflected a name, half faded. The crowd didn't know what it meant, but the guard, he never looked at it. Not even once. He remembered a hallway, cold linoleum, a stack of files left on a folding chair, third from the top, a name he once called friend, ink bleeding into the edge of the paper. A single line struck through it, not by accident, not under orders, but by his own hand. No one questioned it. No ceremony missed him. No family received a letter. Only silence. And a scabbard polished one extra time that week. That night, he'd stood alone at the south gate, uniform crisp, face still, fingers aching from the pressure of the pen he'd snapped in half. Since then, he had mastered stillness, perfected the weight of unreadable posture, learned to hold a stare without letting it land. He never looked back that day. He never forgot how not to. And now, the man on the ground wears a medal from that same forgotten unit. And Elias still cannot lift his eyes. A click, then another. The sharp shudder of phones piercing the silence like insects. A voice muttered, "Do something." Another whispered, "He's just letting him beg." The air thickened. The light grew lower. Longer shadows crept from beneath passing shoes, as if the day itself didn't want to stay. Someone zoomed in. Someone sighed. The woman in the gray coat held her phone higher, not to see more, but to be seen, seeing. Behind the railings, a boy in a Navy school jumper had stopped walking, still holding his sandwich, still staring. He didn't ask questions. He just looked. The veteran's hand still gripped the guard's ankle, no tighter, no looser. But Elias hadn't moved at all. Not a blink, not a breath. Only his shadow, now entirely separated from the crowd, not cast by the sun, but by something heavier. His right hand shifted, just slightly, gloved fingers, brushing the edge of his scabbard. Not to adjust, not to rest, but to cover. A name. The silver etching beneath his palm had been clean once, bright, sharp, perfect. Now it was dulled, deliberately so, scratched not by time, but by intent. A faint residue of black ink, still visible in the groove of one letter, as if someone had tried to erase it, then thought better. The boy behind the railings leaned forward, squinted, eyes locked not on the man, but the sword. No one else noticed. The veteran still held on, still pleading, with his silence. And the guard? He didn't move again. But the name on his scabbard, the one he once fought to polish, was now hidden by the same hand that once struck it out on paper. And no one had asked why. A voice snapped, "Is this a performance or cruelty?" A woman stepped forward, not fast, but with purpose. She reached down, not to help the veteran, but to pull his hand away from the guard's ankle. The old man winced. His grip slipped, then tightened again. A plea without a word. Someone shouted, "Leave him!" Another replied, "He's a soldier, not a nurse." Arguments broke like glass, scattered, loud, unfocused. The boy at the railing still hadn't moved. His sandwich dropped, untouched, and the guard, Elias, remained frozen. But now, his breathing had changed, shallow, measured, barely visible beneath the perfect seams of his uniform. His eyes flicked, just once, towards the woman's hand, then returned to stillness. No command, no word, just the faintest twitch in his jaw, like someone forcing memory back down his throat. Behind him, a siren began to wail in the distance, and no one knew if it was coming closer. The boy behind the railings moved, not towards the crowd, but towards the gate. In his hand, a folded piece of paper, edges frayed, corners thumbed. He passed it to the gray-coated woman, said nothing, then stepped back. She hesitated, opened it. Her breath caught. It wasn't a letter. It was a copy of a tribute program, dated 10 years ago. The name of the fallen, missing from the printed roll, but scribbled by hand, in faint graphite, on the back corner, Lance Corporal Joseph Trenwith. One name, one absence, one link. She looked up, back at the guard, then down at the veteran still kneeling, hand now trembling, not from pain, but memory. The guard's jaw remained still, but his hand no longer covered the scabbard. The name beneath, visible now, not his brother's. And for the first time that day, he blinked. The desert air had been thick with smoke, not from bombs, but from burning uniforms. He remembered the weight of his brother's body, limp, half covered in sand, the left side torn where the blast had caught them both. Joseph had tried to speak, twice, then stilled, one eye open, unblinking. Elias had gripped his wrist, fingers soaked red, trying to stop what had already ended. The radio crackled. Names were called. He never answered. Later, in the transport tent, he signed the wrong form, intentionally. Crossed a box that left Joseph's record in limbo. He told no one. Let him vanish. Because the shame of not saving him felt easier than the weight of mourning him publicly. Since that day, he stood straight, saluted well, spoke little, and when people knelt before him, like now, he only remembered how his brother had never gotten back up. He didn't speak, didn't move. Not at first. But then, his left hand, the one untouched since the crowd had gathered, opened, slow, precise, like he was releasing something no one could see. It dropped gently to his side, palm facing the veteran, fingers loose. Nothing in it, but everything left behind. Then, his chin lowered, no more than an inch, not a bow, not a nod, just enough to break the line of defiance he had worn for years. The woman with the phone lowered it. No one told her to. She just did. The boy stepped off the curb, stopped, stared. The light shifted, not brighter, but quieter, as if the street itself had understood something the rest were still learning. And the metal on the veteran's chest caught the last breath of sun, reflected upwards onto Elias's glove, then held, unmoving. The street fell still, not silent, still. A gust passed, but no one moved. The woman in the gray coat lowered her phone all the way, her hands folded, without thinking, at her waist. The boy dropped his eyes, not from fear, but as if he'd just learned what not to look away from. A man near the back stepped off the pavement, then paused, as though the next step required permission he no longer had. Even the pigeons didn't scatter, just watched. No voices, no cameras, no judgments, just the weight of a truth unspoken, but understood. The veteran's hand slid gently from Elias's ankle, as if his body had finally caught up with the apology he never gave. No one reached down, no one helped. But from the edge of the crowd, a woman removed her beret and held it to her chest. The veteran had let go, but Elias hadn't moved. Not forward, not back, just remained. The crowd had changed, not their number, but their posture. Hands lowered, shoulders quietened, eyes no longer looking for fault, only for meaning. A child pressed his ear against his mother's coat, not crying, just listening to the silence. The shadow of the guard stretched long across the cobblestones, reaching the spot where the man had knelt. The name on the scabbard was visible now, its edges dulled, its story not told aloud, but seen. And somewhere in the stillness, a bird took flight. Not startled, just released. Elias blinked once, not from dust, not from grief, but as if, for the first time in years, he allowed the world back in. He never saluted, never spoke, never turned. He simply stood. One man, in red, holding nothing and everything. Perhaps he wasn't there to be forgiven at all. Or maybe he simply chose to remind us of what we'd forgotten. Some silences are not empty. They are full of names never spoken, wrongs never righted, and choices too heavy to explain. This story reminds us that not every act of kindness wears a smile, and not every act of strength makes a sound. There are moments in life when doing nothing, when simply standing still, is the loudest thing a soul can do. For those of us who have lived long enough, we know. There are apologies that never come. There are wounds that will never close. But sometimes, just the act of not pushing someone away, of letting them hold on, even if we cannot forgive, is a kind of peace too quiet for younger hearts to understand. As we grow older, we learn that justice and love do not always meet at the same place, and that letting someone grieve beside us, even if we don't reach back, is a way of saying, "You're not alone in what you carry." Perhaps the deepest strength is to remember with dignity and to choose silence, not as surrender, but as grace.